The Italian Mafia boss thought his Romanian wife didn't understand his language. At their wedding, she heard his secret. At her own wedding reception, everyone looked at Alina as if she were an intruder. She was Romanian, he was Italian, and not just any Italian. Matteo Romano was the kind of man people spoke about quietly, behind closed doors. To the public, he was a discreet businessman who owned several luxury hotels and restaurants across northern Italy. But to those who knew the truth, Matteo Romano was the head of a family that never lost. Not money, not territory, not people. And now, in front of nearly 200 guests, Matteo had just married a woman his family considered completely unsuitable for him. Alina wore an elegant but simple wedding dress. No excessive diamonds, no dramatic trains stretching across the ballroom, nothing designed to demand attention, and yet every eye in the room seemed to follow her, especially the women of the Romano family. "She's beautiful," Matteo's aunt said quietly in Italian, certain Alina couldn't understand her. Then she smiled. "But beauty can't replace good blood." Alina calmly lifted her glass to her lips. She didn't react. Matteo had warned her from the beginning that his family could be difficult. What he hadn't told her was just how difficult. But there was something none of them knew. Something even Matteo didn't know. Alina understood Italian perfectly. Not a few words, not basic greetings, perfectly. Years earlier, while working for an Italian company in Bucharest, she had learned the language and eventually become fluent. She had never told Matteo. At first, there had been no reason to. Later, however, she noticed something interesting. Whenever members of Matteo's family were around, they switched to Italian the moment a conversation became serious, and because they believed Alina couldn't understand them, they spoke freely. Very freely. She had heard comments about herself, doubts, warnings, even veiled threats, but she had never heard anything about Matteo that made her afraid of him, until their wedding night. Matteo reached beneath the table and took her hand. "Are you okay?" Alina looked at him and smiled. "Yes, you're lying. I'm just tired." He lifted her fingers to his lips. "We'll stay a little longer, then we'll leave." There was no coldness in his voice. With her, Matteo was a different man. Maybe that was why Alina had fallen in love with him. Not because of his money, not because of his power, but because of the things no one else ever saw. The way he made her coffee in the morning, the fact that he remembered exactly which flowers she liked. The night she had been sick with a fever and Matteo canceled a meeting his men had called essential, just to stay beside her until morning. That Matteo seemed nothing like the man people whispered about. And perhaps loving that side of him had made Alina forget what kind of family she had married into. Across the ballroom, Matteo's younger brother Luca gave him a discreet signal. Matteo stood. "I'll be right back." Alina caught his hand. "Where are you going?" "Luca needs me." "Now?" Matteo hesitated, only for a fraction of a second. 5 minutes. He kissed her forehead and walked away. Alina watched Matteo and Luca disappear through a side door leading to the old villa's library. Nothing unusual, except a few moments later, Vittorio Fontana followed them. One of the Romano family's oldest associates. Alina had met him several times. She had never liked him. Vittorio rarely smiled, and whenever he did, he looked like a man who knew something everyone else didn't. Alina tried to forget about it. A few minutes later, the ballroom began to feel suffocating. Too much noise, too many people, too many eyes watching her. She stood and headed toward the terrace. To reach it, she had to walk down a narrow corridor running behind the library, and that was when she heard Luca's voice, in Italian. "Are you going to tell her tonight?" Alina slowed down, then Matteo answered, "No." She stopped. She knew she shouldn't listen. But then Luca said something that froze her in place. "Matteo, she's your wife now." Silence. Then Vittorio spoke. "All the more reason she needs to know before it's too late." Alina felt her stomach tighten. Matteo answered calmly, "She won't find out anything." "You think you can hide this forever?" Luca asked. "I can hide it long enough to keep her away from it." Alina's fingers tightened around the small bouquet she was still carrying. "Away from what? Away from whom?" Vittorio sighed. "And what happens if she finds out you agreed to the marriage because of the arrangement?" Alina felt the blood drain from her face. The arrangement? What arrangement? Silence filled the library. Then Matteo spoke again. His voice was lower now, colder. "Don't say that here." "But it's the truth," Luca replied. Alina could barely breathe. It doesn't matter why it started, Matteo said. It will matter to her. Not if she never finds out. Alina felt as though the walls were closing in around her. Her mind desperately searched for another explanation. Maybe they were discussing business. Maybe some family arrangement had nothing to do with her. Maybe. Then Vittorio spoke again, and every explanation collapsed. That girl actually believes you married her because you loved her. Alina closed her eyes, silence, long, unbearable. Then Matteo answered, "Let her believe that." Alina took a step backward. She could no longer feel the floor beneath her feet. She heard only those 4 words. Let her believe that. Luca sounded angry now. Matteo! Enough. And what happens when she finds out about Chiara? Alina opened her eyes. Chiara. She knew that name. Chiara Fontana, Vittorio's daughter. The woman Matteo's mother had repeatedly hinted should have become his wife. Suddenly, Alina remembered every cold glance. Every uncomfortable family dinner. Every time Chiara had sat beside Matteo as if that seat already belonged to her. Vittorio spoke again. Chiara isn't going to accept this forever. I don't care what Chiara accepts, Matteo replied. For 1 second, relief washed through Alina. Then Luca asked another question. What about the promise? Matteo didn't answer immediately. When he finally did, his voice was so low Alina almost missed it. The promise still stands. Her eyes filled with tears. The promise still stands. She had been married for only a few hours, and already there was another woman, an arrangement, a promise, and a husband who had apparently just admitted that he wanted her to believe he had married her for love. Alina stepped away from the door. She couldn't listen anymore. She returned to the ballroom. Everyone was laughing. The music continued. Waiters refilled champagne glasses. Matteo's mother looked at her and smiled. For the first time all evening. And suddenly Alina understood why. She knew. They all knew. Everyone except Alina. When Matteo returned to the table, Alina looked exactly as he had left her. Back straight. A faint smile on her lips. Her glass sitting untouched in front of her. He sat beside her. Did you go outside? No. Are you sure you're okay? Perfect. Matteo studied her. Alina. Yes? What happened? She turned toward him. She wanted desperately to tell him she understood every word, to demand an explanation. Who was Chiara? What arrangement? What promise? Why had he said those terrible words? Let her believe that. But something inside her changed. She didn't want an explanation. Not yet. She wanted the truth. All of it. And if Matteo believed she couldn't understand Italian, then for the first time since entering his world, Alina had the advantage. She smiled. Nothing. Matteo touched her cheek. I love you. Only an hour earlier, those words would have made her heart race. Now they felt almost insulting. But she showed nothing. I love you too. At that moment, Chiara Fontana raised her champagne glass from the nearby table. She looked directly at Alina, then, in Italian, completely convinced the Romanian bride couldn't understand her, she said, Enjoy tonight, Romanian. Alina remained still. Chiara smiled. Because your place beside Matteo was never meant to be permanent. Slowly, Alina raised her glass and smiled back. For the first time, Chiara looked confused, because there was no insecurity left in Alina's eyes. There was something far more dangerous. Certainty. By morning, she was going to discover exactly who she had married, and why. Alina didn't sleep on her wedding night. Matteo assumed it was excitement, exhaustion, the overwhelming emotions of the day. He had no idea the woman lying beside him was repeating every sentence she had heard outside that library. Let her believe that. The promise still stands. What happens when she finds out about Chiara? But one sentence hurt more than all the others. That girl actually believes you married her because you loved her. Before sunrise, Alina slipped out of bed and walked onto the balcony. Villa Romano stretched silently beneath her. Beyond the estate, the Tuscan hills were beginning to glow beneath the first morning light. This should have been the most beautiful morning of her life. Her first morning as the wife of the man she loved. Instead, she wondered whether marrying Matteo Romano had been the greatest mistake she had ever made. You didn't sleep. Matteo's voice startled her. She turned. He stood in the balcony doorway, his shirt open slightly at the collar. A little. He walked toward her. Do you regret it? The question hit her harder than he could have known. Regret what? Marrying me. Alina studied his face. For a moment she wondered if he knew. Maybe he had seen her near the library. Maybe he was testing her. But his expression remained calm. Should I? A faint smile touched his mouth. Probably. Why? Because my family isn't easy. Alina almost laughed. His family. Always his family. And you are? Am I what? Easy? Matteo looked at her for a long moment. No. At least you're honest about that. He placed his palm against her cheek. You're the woman I want. A knot formed in Alina's throat. This was her chance. She could have said it. Then tell me about the arrangement. Instead, she asked, Matteo? Yes? Who is Chiara to you? His hand stopped against her cheek, only for a fraction of a second, but Alina noticed. Why are you asking? Because your mother talks about her often. Chiara is Vittorio's daughter. I know who she is. Then, I asked what she is to you. Matteo stepped back slightly. Nothing. Nothing? Nothing you need to worry about. That wasn't my question. For the first time, his body became rigid. There was once a discussion between our families. Alina's heart began pounding. What kind of discussion? One that doesn't matter anymore. Marriage? Matteo looked at her sharply. Who told you? And there it was. Confirmation. No one. Then how did you... I have eyes, Matteo. Your mother looks at Chiara like she's the daughter-in-law she was supposed to have. Vittorio looks at me like I'm a problem, and Chiara looks at me like I stole something from her. Matteo exhaled slowly. Years ago, my father and Vittorio wanted to unite the families. Through you and Chiara. Yes. And you agreed? A pause. At the time, yes. Alina's stomach tightened. Were you engaged to her? No. But you promised you would marry her? Not Chiara? Then who? Matteo looked directly at her. My father. The promise. Alina turned toward the hills. And that promise? Matteo went completely still. What about it? Alina realized she had gone too far. Did you keep it? He studied her. No. Was that a lie? Or the truth? Because the night before she had heard him say, the promise still stands. Alina no longer knew what to believe. Over the next several days, she played the role of the happy newlywed. And she listened. It was incredible how much people revealed when they believed you couldn't understand them. At breakfast, Matteo's mother told her sister in Italian, she won't last. Alina calmly spread jam on her toast. Matteo will get bored. Alina took a sip of coffee. And when the truth comes out, everything will return to where it belongs. Alina didn't react. Later that afternoon, she passed two of Matteo's men near the cars. Romano did something insane. Because of the Romanian? Not because of her? For her? Alina slowed. If Fontana discovers what Matteo did to get her out of the arrangement, shut up. The conversation stopped. Alina kept walking. But now something didn't make sense. To get her out of the arrangement, not put her into it, get her out. That afternoon she found Luca alone on the terrace. She had always liked Matteo's younger brother. He was easier to talk to, less intimidating. Can I ask you something? Anything. Matteo and Chiara. Luca nearly dropped his cup. Alina noticed. What about them? Were they ever together? No. The answer came so quickly that Alina believed it. Never? Never. But they were supposed to get married. Luca looked up. Matteo told you? I figured it out. Luca seemed to choose every word carefully. Our father wanted it. And Matteo? Back then, Matteo did what was expected of him. So he agreed. He agreed to many things. Including Chiara? Luca leaned back. Alina, if you have doubts about my brother, talk to him. I can't ask the right questions if I don't know what I'm supposed to ask. Luca went silent. Then he said something that changed everything. Ask him what happened in Bucharest 2 weeks before you met. Alina froze. Bucharest? Luca immediately realized he had said too much. Forget I said anything. Luca. He stood. It isn't my story to tell. What was Matteo doing in Bucharest? Talk to him. Luca. But he was already walking away. That night Alina waited for Matteo. He didn't come home for dinner. 10 o'clock passed, then 11. Finally, her phone vibrated. Unknown number, one message. If you want to know why Matteo married you, come to Villa Fontana tomorrow at 11 a.m. Come alone. Alina didn't need to ask who had sent it. She knew. Chiara. The next morning, Alina told Matteo nothing. Villa Fontana was less than 20 minutes away. Chiara was waiting on the terrace. Elegant, calm. A thin folder rested on the table in front of her. You came? You said you had something to show me? Chiara smiled. Then she deliberately switched to English. I thought this would make things easier for you. Alina almost smiled. Perfect. You know Matteo was supposed to marry me. I know. For the first time, Chiara looked surprised. He told you? That doesn't matter. Chiara recovered quickly. Then I suppose he didn't tell you why he met you. Alina felt cold. What are you talking about? Chiara opened the folder. She removed a photograph and slid it across the table. Alina picked it up. Matteo, in Bucharest. A date was printed in the corner. 14 days before the day Alina believed they had met for the first time. She looked up. What was he doing there? Chiara placed another photograph on the table. Matteo entering a building. Another. Matteo speaking with a man. Then another photograph. And this time, Alina forgot how to breathe. It was her, Alina, leaving her former workplace. The photograph had clearly been taken from a distance. What is this? Chiara's expression filled with cold satisfaction. Matteo was watching you before he ever met you. Alina's hand began to tremble. Why? Because your meeting wasn't an accident. Alina stood. You're lying. Then ask him. Why would Matteo have been watching me? Chiara stood too. Because your father owed something to the Romano family. Alina froze. My father died when I was 17. I know. He never knew Matteo. Not Matteo. Chiara stepped closer. His father. No. Your father lived in Italy before you were born. He worked for the Romano family. You're lying. Then why do you think Matteo knew who you were before you knew who he was? Alina stared at the photographs. Chiara pushed one final sheet toward her. Read it. It was an old document. Her father's name appeared on it, Nicolae Petrescu, and beneath it was another name, Romano. Alina's fingers went numb. What does this mean? Chiara smiled. It means your love story began with a debt. Alina looked up. And it will end the same way? And that was when Alina did something Chiara never expected. For the first time, she answered her in Italian. Fluently. Perfectly. If you're going to lie to me, Chiara, at least do it in a language you think I can't catch you in. Chiara's smile disappeared. Completely. Her face went pale. Alina slowly stood. Yes. Chiara said nothing. I understood every word you said about me. Silence. At the wedding? Chiara's eyes widened. At the family dinners. Alina stepped closer. And I understood exactly what you said when you told me to enjoy my place beside Matteo while I still could. Chiara took a step backward. For the first time since Alina had met her, the woman looked afraid, not afraid of Alina. Afraid of how much Alina might have heard, and suddenly Alina understood. Chiara wasn't shocked because she spoke Italian. She was shocked because she didn't know how much Alina knew. What are you hiding from me? Chiara remained silent. What is the arrangement? Nothing. And what promise did Matteo make? Something changed in Chiara's face. Alina saw it immediately. She had finally touched the real secret. Tell me. Slowly, Chiara's smile returned. So, you heard that. What promise? Chiara stared at her. Then she said, It isn't Matteo's promise to marry me that should frighten you. Alina froze. Then which promise? Chiara leaned closer. The promise Matteo made to your father before he died. Alina felt the ground disappear beneath her. Matteo was 16 when my father died. Exactly. That's impossible. No. Chiara reached into the folder and removed an old photograph. She handed it to Alina. Her father was in the picture, much younger, standing beside Matteo's father, and behind them stood a teenage boy. Matteo. Alina looked up, unable to speak. Chiara lowered her voice. Ask your husband why your father died only 3 days after this photograph was taken. At that exact moment, a man's voice came from behind Alina, cold, furious. Enough, Chiara. Alina turned. Matteo stood in the terrace doorway. His eyes dropped to the photograph in her hand, and for the first time since she had known the Italian Mafia boss, Alina saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Fear, not for himself, for her. Alina, she stepped back. Don't come near me. Matteo stopped. Let me explain. Alina raised the photograph between them. Then start with my father. Matteo said nothing. You knew him? Silence. Matteo. He closed his eyes for 1 second, then answered. Yes. One word. Enough to destroy everything Alina believed about their love story. And you knew who I was before you met me? Matteo looked at her. This time, he didn't lie. Yes. Tears filled Alina's eyes. Then tell me one thing. Her voice trembled. When you came to Bucharest, she pressed the photograph against her chest. Did you come because you wanted me? Matteo remained motionless. Or did you come because you owed something to my father? Matteo said nothing, and somehow his silence hurt more than any answer could have. Matteo didn't answer immediately. Alina stared at him as if the man standing in front of her were no longer the husband she had married, but a stranger. Answer me. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Did you come to Bucharest because of me, or because of my father? Matteo lowered his eyes toward the old photograph in her hand. For both of you. Alina gave a short laugh. There was no humor in it. How convenient. I'm not trying to defend myself. Then what are you trying to do? Tell you the truth. Behind them, Chiara shifted slightly. Matteo didn't even look at her. Leave. Chiara lifted her chin. You don't give orders in my house. Matteo's voice remained calm. Today I do. That was all it took. Something in his tone made Chiara understand that this was no longer a conversation she could control. She gathered the folder from the table. Before leaving, she looked at Alina one last time. The triumph that had been on her face only minutes earlier was gone. Now there was something else. Concern, maybe even fear. Then she disappeared inside the villa. Alina and Matteo remained alone on the terrace. Talk. Matteo slowly approached the table and picked up the photograph. Your father, Nikolai, worked for my father for years. Alina stared at him. What exactly does worked for mean? Matteo hesitated. It means he was part of his inner circle. Alina felt her stomach tighten. My father? Yes. The same father who spent my entire childhood telling me never to get involved with men like you? The same man. She shook her head. No. Alina, I don't believe you. I wouldn't either if I hadn't known him. She looked down at the photograph again. Her father looked so young, alive, standing next to Matteo's father as if they had known each other for years. And behind them, Matteo, a boy, a teenager. What happened? Matteo drew in a slow breath. Your father wanted out. Out of what? The family. Alina stared at him. And your father wouldn't let him? It wasn't that simple, she suddenly snapped. Nothing with your family is ever simple. Matteo said nothing. Alina felt tears burn behind her eyes. My father died in a car accident. Matteo's face changed. That's what you were allowed to believe. Alina went completely still. What did you just say? He met her eyes. It wasn't an accident. For several seconds, the entire world seemed to disappear. The breeze moving through the trees, the birds, the distant sound of traffic beyond the estate, even her own breathing. Only Matteo remained. And those 4 words, it wasn't an accident. Who? Matteo didn't respond. Alina's voice rose. Who killed my father? It wasn't my father. I didn't ask you who didn't do it. His jaw tightened. Vittorio Fontana. Alina felt her knees weaken. She grabbed the edge of the table. Chiara's father? Yes. Suddenly, everything connected in the most horrifying possible way. Vittorio, Chiara, the promise, the arrangement, the photographs, the lies. Matteo continued. Your father discovered Vittorio was betraying my father. He was stealing money and passing information to people who wanted to weaken the Romano family. And my father found out? Yes. And Vittorio killed him? Matteo looked at her. Yes. Alina covered her mouth. Matteo instinctively stepped toward her. No. She immediately raised her hand. Don't touch me. He stopped. Why did your family keep Vittorio around if you knew? My father didn't have proof. But you did. Matteo looked down at the photograph. I saw something that night. What? I saw Vittorio getting into your father's car a few hours before Nikolai died. And you said nothing? I was 16. But you knew? I suspected. Alina wiped away a tear. And the promise? Matteo closed his eyes briefly. Before your father died, he came to me. Alina stared at him. To you? Yes. Why would a grown man go to a 16-year-old boy? Because he knew my father listened to me more than people realized, and because Nikolai had caught me several times listening to conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. Alina almost laughed at the absurdity of it, almost. What did he tell you? Matteo looked directly into her eyes. He told me he had a daughter in Romania. Her heart seemed to stop. Me. Yes. And he said that if anything happened to him, I had to make sure the Fontana family never reached you. Alina stood frozen. That was the promise. Not Chiara, not a marriage, not some agreement between powerful families. Her. She was the promise. Why would the Fontanas come after me? Because Nikolai had hidden something. What? Evidence. Alina's fingers curled around the edge of the table. What kind of evidence? The kind that could destroy the Fontana family. Where is it? For years, I believed it was somewhere in Romania. Alina looked at him. And that's why you were watching me. Yes. The word hurt, even now. So, Chiara was telling the truth? Half the truth. You came to Bucharest looking for evidence. Yes. And you met me on purpose. Yes. Anger surged through her. Then everything between us was a lie. No. How can you possibly say that? Because my plan was to find out whether you knew anything about your father's evidence and then leave. Alina gave him a bitter smile. How romantic. I never said it was. She crossed her arms. Matteo continued. I watched you for 2 weeks. I know. I knew where you worked, where you lived, who you talked to. Wonderful. And then one morning I saw you give your coat to an elderly woman who was shaking at a bus stop. Alina said nothing. The next day, you stayed late at work because one of your colleagues had lost her mother and you didn't want her to be alone. Matteo. On the 3rd day, you bought food for a man sleeping near the train station. That doesn't matter. It mattered to me. She shook her head. Don't turn this into some love story. I'm not. He took one careful step closer. I'm telling you when my plan started falling apart. Alina looked at him. When I walked into that cafe and asked if I could sit at your table, I was supposed to get you talking about your father. Pain flashed across her face. I knew it. But after 20 minutes, I had forgotten why I was there. She didn't answer. After 2 days, I kept telling myself I needed more time. To investigate me. That's what I told myself. And the truth? Matteo smiled bitterly. The truth was that I wanted to see you again. Alina turned her face away. She didn't want his words to affect her. But they did. And that made her even angrier. Why didn't you tell me? Because the moment you knew everything, you became a target. I already was? No, not exactly. As long as Vittorio believed you knew nothing, you were relatively safe. And the wedding? Matteo fell silent. Alina turned back toward him. That's the part I want to understand. He took a deep breath. When I discovered Vittorio had started checking into you, I knew he had finally realized who you were. And? There is an old rule in my family. Alina raised one eyebrow. Of course there is. Anyone who marries the head of the Romano family falls under his direct protection. Alina froze. Slowly, the truth became clear. You married me to protect me. That was part of the arrangement. With whom? Luca, my men, the people responsible for keeping you safe. Not with me. No. Exactly. Her voice broke. You decided for me. Yes. You chose for me. Yes. And you let me believe the wedding happened only because you loved me. Matteo didn't hide from the accusation. Yes. Alina slapped him. The sound cracked across the terrace. Matteo didn't move. He didn't touch his cheek. He didn't become angry. He simply looked at her, and Alina started crying. I hate you for that. You have every right to. You had no right. I know. You had no right to take away my choice. I know. Then why did you do it? This time, Matteo answered without hesitation. Because I would rather have you hate me alive than love me dead? Alina closed her eyes. That was the problem. He had said exactly the one thing that made everything harder. Because Matteo Romano wasn't the monster Chiara had tried to convince her he was, but he wasn't the completely honest man Alina had believed she had married either. He was somewhere between the two, a man who loved her, and a man who had spent his entire life believing that loving someone gave him the right to decide what was best for them. Alina wiped her tears. I want to leave. For the first time, Matteo's face lost its color. Where? That's none of your business. Alina, if you stop me, then everything you just said about love means nothing. Matteo went silent, and then he did something she had not expected. He stepped aside. I won't stop you. Alina stared at him. That's it? What do you want me to do? I don't know. If I order you to stay, I'll be doing exactly what you're accusing me of doing. She said nothing. So leave, if that's what you want. For the first time, his voice almost broke. Then he added, but take 2 of my men with you. Alina glared at him. Matteo raised both hands. Not to watch you, to keep you alive. Despite everything, she nearly laughed. You really can't help yourself. No. For 1 second, a tiny smile appeared on her face. Then it vanished, and Alina left. For 3 weeks, she stayed in a smaller villa far from the Romano estate. She didn't speak to Matteo. He didn't appear at her door. He didn't bombard her with phone calls. He didn't send flowers. He didn't send expensive gifts. Once a day, her phone received the same short message. Are you okay? That was all. Alina never replied. But every evening, she looked at the message. And every evening, she hated herself a little for feeling relieved that it had arrived. Then one night, something different came. A courier delivered an envelope. Inside was a key and an address. Bucharest. Beneath the address was a handwritten note from Matteo. Your father left this for you. I didn't open it. The choice is yours. Alina stared at the key for a long time. 2 days later, she was on a plane to Romania. The address led her to an old storage facility on the outskirts of Bucharest. Nothing about it looked important. No guards, no elegant building, no sign that somewhere inside might be the answer to a mystery that had followed her family for years. Alina walked down a narrow corridor until she found the number written on Matteo's note. A metal locker. Her hands shook as she inserted the key. For a moment, it didn't turn. Then, click. The door opened. Inside were folders, photographs, old recordings, documents, stacks of papers that had yellowed with age, and one envelope. Her name was written across the front. Alina. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Her father's. Her legs almost gave way. Alina sat on the concrete floor and opened the envelope. The first line was enough to make her cry. She read the letter once, then again, and a third time. Her father explained enough for her to understand what Matteo had been trying to protect her from, enough to understand why Vittorio had spent years searching for what Nicolae Petrescu had hidden, but it was the final paragraph that broke something inside her. Her father had written, if Matteo Romano ever reaches you, know that I trusted him when he was only a boy. But you owe him nothing, not because of me, not because of his family. Your life must always be your own choice. Alina pressed the letter against her lips and cried, because suddenly she understood everything. Her father had never asked Matteo to marry her. He had never asked Matteo to love her. He had never asked him to build a life with her. He had asked only one thing, protect my daughter. Everything else had been Matteo's choice. And the letter made something else painfully clear. Now Alina had to make hers, but before she could leave the storage unit, her phone vibrated. An unknown Italian number. Alina stared at the screen, then answered. Silence. Hello? For several seconds, no one spoke. Then she heard a man's voice. Low, older, familiar. Did you find Nicolae's evidence? Alina's blood turned cold. She knew that voice. She had heard it at countless family dinners, at her wedding, behind the library door, Vittorio Fontana. Alina slowly stood. How did you get this number? Vittorio ignored the question. You have something that belongs to me. Alina looked at the boxes surrounding her, the photographs, the documents, the recordings. No, her voice became steady. I have something that belonged to my father. Vittorio laughed softly. You really are Nikolai's daughter. Alina tightened her grip on the phone. What do you want? The same thing I wanted 20 years ago. And what is that? The evidence. Alina looked toward the open door of the storage unit. A shadow moved across the corridor. Her heart stopped. Vittorio continued, and this time, Alina. The footsteps outside came closer. Matteo Romano won't be there to save you. The call ended. Alina stared at the phone, then at the shadow appearing beneath the door. Someone was outside, and whoever it was had followed her all the way to Bucharest. Alina stared at the shadow beneath the storage room door. The footsteps stopped. Her fingers tightened around the phone. For one terrible second, Vittorio's final words echoed in her mind. Matteo Romano won't be there to save you. The handle moved. Alina stepped backward. The door opened, and she froze. It wasn't Vittorio. It wasn't one of the Fontana men. It was one of the two men that Matteo had insisted she take with her. Behind him stood the second. Mrs. Romano? Alina released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. What are you doing here? The man looked uncomfortable. Mr. Romano told us to stay far enough away that you wouldn't feel watched. Alina closed her eyes. Of course he had. But close enough to intervene if something happened. She almost laughed. Even from hundreds of miles away, Matteo was still Matteo. Did you hear the call? No. Vittorio Fontana knows I'm here. Both men immediately became alert. Then we need to leave. Alina looked back at the locker, at the documents, at her father's recordings, at the letter still trembling in her hand. No. Mrs. Romano, I said no. The men exchanged a look. Alina picked up the folders. We're taking everything. One of them stepped forward. Where? Alina looked down at her father's handwriting one more time. Then she answered, To Matteo. She returned to Italy with the evidence 2 days later. Not because Matteo had ordered her to, not because she needed rescuing, and not because she had forgiven him. She returned because she had finally understood what her father had tried to tell her. Her life had to be her choice. And for the first time since discovering Matteo's secret, Alina knew exactly what she wanted. When she arrived at Villa Romano, the house seemed strangely quiet. Luca met her near the entrance. His eyes widened when he saw her. Alina, where is Matteo? In the library. Of course he was. The same room, the room where everything had begun. Alina walked down the corridor without another word. The library door was open. Matteo sat behind the old wooden desk, several files spread out in front of him. He looked tired, more tired than she had ever seen him. When he heard her footsteps, he raised his head and froze. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Matteo stood, but he didn't approach. You came back. I did. His eyes moved to the bag in her hand. You found it? Yes. Everything? Yes. Matteo nodded slowly. Good. That was all. No demand to see the documents. No attempt to take them from her. No question about what she intended to do. Alina noticed. Vittorio called me. Everything in Matteo changed. His face hardened instantly. When? In Bucharest. What did he say? That the evidence belonged to him. Matteo's jaw tightened. And? He told me you wouldn't be there to save me. For the first time, something almost amused appeared in Alina's expression. He was wrong. Matteo frowned. Alina continued. Your men were outside. Matteo looked slightly guilty. I told them not to get too close. I noticed. I promised I wouldn't stop you from leaving. You didn't. I didn't promise I'd let Vittorio kill you. Despite herself, Alina smiled, only slightly. Then she placed the bag on the desk. Matteo looked at it. My father was right. About what? He trusted you? Matteo's expression changed. Alina removed Nikolai's letter. He wrote about you. Matteo stared at the envelope but didn't reach for it. What did he say? That he trusted you when you were 16. Something flickered in Matteo's eyes. And? He also told me I owed you nothing. Matteo slowly nodded. He was right. Alina watched him carefully. No argument? No. He said my life had to be my choice. Yes. And you took that choice away from me. Matteo lowered his eyes. Yes. There was no excuse this time, no explanation, no attempt to dress what he had done in noble intentions, just the truth. Alina appreciated that more than she wanted to admit. What happens to Vittorio now? Matteo looked toward the documents. That depends on what you want. Alina stared at him. What I want. Yes. You're asking me? I'm learning. The answer almost made her smile again. Almost. Alina opened the bag. She placed photographs on the desk, bank records, copies of coded transactions, names, dates, old recordings. Her father had documented everything, for years, enough to prove that Vittorio had betrayed the Romano family, enough to expose the network he had built behind their backs, enough to destroy him without firing a single shot. Matteo looked through several pages. His face grew colder with each one. He kept all of it. My father knew what Vittorio was doing. He knew more than my father ever did. Alina folded her arms. So what do you do with it? Matteo looked at her. What do you want me to do? That question mattered, far more than he understood. No revenge. Matteo said nothing. No bodies. Still nothing. No disappearing people because your family decided they were inconvenient. One corner of Matteo's mouth moved. You're making this difficult. I'm serious. So am I. Alina stared at him. Finally, Matteo nodded. No blood. You promise? Yes. She lifted an eyebrow. You have an interesting relationship with promises. That hurt him. She could see it. Then I'll make this one differently. How? I'm making it to you while you know exactly what it means. Alina considered him, then nodded. Fine. Within days, the Romano family moved against Vittorio Fontana, but not in the way Vittorio expected. There was no nighttime ambush, no gunfire, no mysterious accident. Instead, doors began closing. Partners stopped answering his calls. Accounts he had hidden for years were frozen. Businesses that depended on Romano connections suddenly refused to work with him. People who had remained loyal because they were afraid realized that Vittorio had lost his protection. And the evidence Nicolae Petrescu had preserved finally reached the people who could use it. Vittorio Fontana lost in 1 week what he had spent decades building. His money, his influence, his allies, his place beside the Romano family, and most importantly, his ability to reach Alina. Chiara disappeared from Italy shortly afterward. Not because Matteo forced her to, because without her father's influence, there was nothing left for her there. 3 weeks later, Alina asked Matteo what had happened. They were in the library again. Vittorio? He's no longer a threat. That sounds suspiciously vague. It's the short version. And Chiara? She left Italy. Did you do something to her? Matteo raised one eyebrow. Do you want the short version again? Yes. I removed the Fontana family from every Romano business and gave your father's evidence to the people who needed it. Alina stared at him. No blood? No blood. She nodded. You're improving. Matteo almost smiled. Then silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, but heavy. There was still one thing left unresolved. Them. Matteo finally asked, Why did you come back? Alina reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her wedding ring. Matteo's face changed immediately. He stared at it. I understand. No. Alina stepped toward him. You don't. She took his hand, then placed the ring in his palm. I'm not wearing this because my father asked you to protect me. Matteo said nothing. I'm not wearing it because becoming Mrs. Romano puts me under your family's protection. Alina. And I'm definitely not wearing it because one day you decided marriage was the most efficient way to keep me alive. Matteo's eyes remained fixed on her. I'll wear it only if you understand something. Tell me. You never decide for me again. Okay. You don't protect me with lies. Okay. You don't hide things because you think the truth is too dangerous for me. Matteo hesitated. Alina raised an eyebrow. Matteo. He sighed. Okay. And one more thing. Anything. For the first time in weeks, Alina smiled. Then she spoke in Italian, perfectly, fluently. Next time you want to hide something from me, choose a language I don't speak. Matteo went completely still. 1 second, 2, his eyes widened. You... Alina started laughing. Yes. Since when? Long before I met you. Matteo ran a hand over his face. Oh, God. Alina was laughing through tears now. Everything. He stared at her. Everything that was said at the wedding. Everything. Matteo closed his eyes. Luca is going to laugh at me for the rest of my life. Probably. And I thought, I know exactly what you thought. Matteo stepped closer. Then something occurred to him. His expression changed. Then you heard what I said outside the library. Alina's smile faded. Part of it. You didn't stay until the end. No. Matteo looked at her. After I said, let her believe that, Luca told me that one day you would hate me. Alina didn't blink. What did you say? Matteo answered quietly. I said that if I had to choose between telling you the truth and putting you in danger, or letting you hate me long enough for me to keep you safe, I would live with you hating me. Alina's chest tightened. Matteo continued. Then Vittorio asked what would happen if, after everything, you chose to leave. And? I told him I would let you. Alina stared at him. You really said that? Yes. And Chiara? Matteo gave a faint smile. The promise they were talking about was never a promise to marry Chiara. I know that now. It was the promise I made to your father. Alina nodded. Matteo looked down at the ring in his palm. So, he lifted his eyes. What do I do with this? Alina slowly extended her left hand. See? What? This time you're asking. A real smile appeared on Matteo's face for the first time in weeks. He held the ring between his fingers, then he looked directly into her eyes. Alina Petrescu, she waited. Do you want to remain my wife? Alina studied him for several seconds. This time there was no hidden arrangement, no family agreement, no secret promise deciding her future, only a question. And her answer. She replied in Italian. Yes. Matteo slowly slid the ring back onto her finger. Then Alina added, one more thing. Matteo laughed softly. There's always one more thing. She stepped closer. Next time your family talks about me at dinner... Yes? Let them. Matteo frowned. Why? Alina smiled. Because it's much more entertaining when they don't know I understand them. 6 months later, the Romano family gathered for dinner. The atmosphere had changed. Not completely. Families like Matteo's didn't transform overnight. But something was different. Alina no longer sat at the table like an outsider. She sat beside Matteo, not because his family had finally decided she belonged there, because she had. Matteo's aunt leaned toward her sister and whispered in Italian, That Romanian woman has completely changed this house. Alina calmly cut into her dessert. The other woman whispered back, And Matteo. Alina hid a smile. Beside her, Matteo noticed immediately. He looked at his relatives. Then, in Italian, he said, You should all be careful what you say. The women looked at him. Matteo reached for Alina's hand. My wife understands every word. The entire table went silent. Alina slowly raised her eyes. His aunt went pale. Luca nearly choked on his wine. Someone at the opposite end of the table whispered, She understands Italian? Alina smiled sweetly. Incredibly well. Luca burst out laughing first, then Matteo. And one by one, the rest of the table joined them. Alina turned toward her husband. You finally told them. Matteo kissed her hand. I got tired of being the only person who knew how dangerous you really are. Alina laughed, and this time, she laughed with the Romano family. Not because she had forgotten Matteo's lies, not because the past no longer mattered, and not because loving him magically erased what he had done. She stayed for one reason, the most important reason of all, because this time, she chose him. If you had been in Alina's place, would you have forgiven Matteo after discovering that he lied to protect her? Do you believe love can ever justify a lie made for your own good? Tell me in the comments. Would you have stayed with Matteo or walked away forever? And if you enjoyed Alina and Matteo's story, subscribe and stay with us for the next story.